And
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Dr. Nikki Davis with Lifestyle Telemedicine, and we have an incredible show today. In fact, this is something that I think we've all been looking forward to for a while to discuss, because this is something that is a little bit more vulnerable, is a little bit more honest, and I think it's an important conversation to have. And it's exciting because we have an incredible panel of people who we are going to be chatting with today. So this will be a discussion, but wherever you're watching from, feel free to comment, and we'll be able to see those comments. And if you have questions, we'll be able to maybe answer some of those questions. So please feel free to get yourself involved. If you want to let us know right away where you're watching from, we would love to see that. But the people that are going to be on our panel today are the incredible Anthony Masiello, Dr. Anthony Lim, Dr. Matthew Lederman, Dr. Kim Scheuer, and then of course, Chef AJ. And this is meant to be a discussion between all of us, and really to kind of understand where this edge of lifestyle medicine lives. Today's discussion really is about, not only, we talk a lot about how powerful lifestyle medicine is, but we don't talk a lot about how it isn't magic and it isn't perfect. So today what we want to talk about is these edges of lifestyle medicine, when people still get sick, even if they are doing all the right things, when maybe sticking to a certain lifestyle is difficult, or too difficult to make it something that you can do for the rest of your life. When shame creeps in about either how you're doing on the lifestyle, or if you do have an illness. We really want this to be an honest, compassionate discussion on the health journey that we all go through as humans. So thank you, first of all, to everyone for being here. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Looks like we have somebody watching from Connecticut. All right. So the first question that I wanted to bring up, anyone welcome to join in. If everyone wants to answer, or if it's something that speaks to you, feel free, but certainly not everyone needs to. But the first thing I want to ask is, what is one thing that you think the public assumes about lifestyle medicine that isn't true?
I'm happy to kick it off, Nikki.
Thank you, Dr. Lim.
So, I'm a huge fan of whole food plant predominant way of eating. I've seen, as over the decade that I've been working so closely with the McDougall program and True North Health Center, and patient after patient, I've literally witnessed miracles happen in terms of reversal of diabetes, reversal of heart disease, reversal of high blood pressure, autoimmune illness. It's awesome. And it really represents, I think, why a lot of us went into medicine in the first place. But at the same time, I've also seen the limits of not just a healthy diet, but even a healthy lifestyle. That people who are doing everything right can still get sick. They can still come down with cancer. They can still develop heart disease. They can still have an illness that doesn't respond, and they still need medications. And often what I've seen is just a real, almost a sense of failure. Like, oh, this way of eating or this lifestyle has failed me. And I really, it makes me sad, because I think that's the wrong takeaway. I think that their life is so much better as a result of the choices that they can make, that they've made, but that it's not everything. And that it's not this way of eating and this lifestyle is not a guarantee. And that the more that we can sort of compassionately communicate this message and model it ourselves, that it then gives patients permission to not get everything right and not have everything turn out the way that they want. And it's still okay. But I feel like those sorts of conversations don't happen as often. And that's my hope. So I'll just say one small thing, like as a plant-based professional, I bring my own life into my conversations. I talk about the last time I, slept in or went to a party and ate more than I wanted to, or went on vacation and kind of went off the rails a bit. And I just talk about it sort of matter-of-factly and instead focus on what I learned from it and how I'm growing through that. And I found that far from being judged or far from making people say, oh, this is not the right thing for me or the right doctor, that it's actually opened up sort of more dialogue. And then you have patients kind of sharing things that they wouldn't have otherwise shared. They said, oh yeah, I struggled with an episode of binge eating last week. And the sense of relief that they feel that they were able to disclose that and not be kicked out of the tribe is huge. And that's a different sort of health benefit that I think we often don't talk about. So I'll leave my comments there.
Well, anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'd like to say something because exactly what Dr. Lim said, I feel like the lifestyle actually failed me because I did it longer than some of you here have been alive for almost 50 years. So I can see why people feel that way because that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, that's understandable.
So, and yet I'm still doing it. Well, I'm still vegan in terms of diet, but technically, I'm taking pig enzymes now because of my pancreatic insufficiency caused by my cancer treatment. So am I even vegan? I got a blessing from the rabbi, but am I vegan? Because I'm eating pig parts, not eating them, but so yeah. I think that a lot of times what happens is, is that many of the lifestyle medicine doctors or plant-based doctors, I don't know if parade is the right word, but, they show a great success story of a certain disease. And then, it's kind of like, not every actor wins an Academy Award. There's wonderful actors in the world, but not everybody can get up and have that Oscar. And so somebody sees somebody with success and it's like, well, then they extrapolate like, well, that means everyone with this kind of cancer or this kind, and it's just not true. I didn't do it for disease though. So I became vegan for ethical reasons. But then when I learned about it, then I was like slapped in the face. Like I didn't think, this could happen in general or to me. So I think that a lot of times people, that's why they want to do it because they want to not have the disease or they want to reverse the disease that they have. But if it doesn't work quickly enough or 100%, they're kind of like, not interested,
It's interesting. Yeah. It's always a risk reduction. It doesn't mean a risk elimination. We have 100% mortality, every single one of us. But it does reduce, but it doesn't mean it eliminates it completely. And I really get sad when people feel like they've not been good enough or not done well enough, which isn't true. You do what you can as best as you can. And when you said, am I really vegan? Yes, you are. You care about the animals. You make the choices that eliminate suffering for the world. And that's great. And keep it up, but you also have to take care of yourself too. And so, I wish we weren't as critical of everybody when we hear that somebody got sick or somebody is not thriving or, I'm the comparison. I'm not as good as you. I didn't lose as much weight. That's not good. It's what works for you and for what you've done to improve your own health and risk factors.
Dr. Simran Malhotra, who's a previvor of cancer, plant-based doctor, he said that the plant-based diet is like wearing a seatbelt. It helps you, but you still can get in a pretty nasty car crash. And I like that analogy, you know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, just to, AJ, I guess I'd wonder how you define failure. Because if you define failure as getting cancer, then according to that definition and criteria, sure. But
Yeah.
I would be cautious about that, right? Because that puts a lot of pressure in, not to name names, we know other incredibly healthy plant-based professionals who have gotten cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I'm a failure. I feel like, who knows if this is being as diligent as I was for so many years caused it to grow more slowly. And I certainly didn't get any other lifestyle disease that many people get, like, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease. And I still think the plant-based diet is unparalleled, for example, for weight loss. But even then, I'm guilty of getting in the mindset of, like, what they say in the McDougall program, well, it's never not worked. Well, that's not true, because there are some people it hasn't worked for, and yet we blame them for doing it wrong. I'm not saying you here on the panel, but I see that a lot. And I still get, you wouldn't believe how many emails I get is that because I didn't do the plant-based diet the way that this person thinks I should, because, I didn't do Dr. Brooke Goldner's program right away, and I did go to True North and I fasted many times, or I didn't do the raw version. People really have these very, they believe this, and the thing is they're generally not the ones that have been sick. But I think, and this is where I'd love to hear from Dr. Matt, because he's so much about compassion and communication. I understand that there's people in the world that don't like vegans. I'm not going to mention the names of their channels, but they have big channels of basically hating vegans. And so you would expect that if you're out there and something happens, they'll make a video about you. But I cannot believe how many vegans just attack other vegans. Like when I came out with my diagnosis, like people, clickbait about their opinion, and they're not even doctors, So, it's kind of sad. But I feel like the hardest part is, like you say, the shame. Like I have shame that I'm swallowing, Zenpep, and things like that, or just that I even got the disease. Like you just feel like, it's just, especially if you're in the public eye. And I cannot tell you how many people are still hiding in the shadows. I'm not going to say their names because maybe they have a book coming out or they have a big following, but they all tell me, and it's like, don't tell me stuff you don't want me to tell, because I hate keeping a secret. I will, but it's amazing how many people silently have gone, because they didn't want to hurt veganism. And I was told early on, I would have come out sooner, but I had a prominent vegan doctor, though, what I do, he goes, don't say anything, it'll hurt the movement. And I'm like, okay, but not saying anything actually hurt myself. And it was actually Dr. Dean Ornish and Ocean Robbins, who I went to for consult, that said, no, you say it,
Yeah.
Speak the truth, and people feel like such a failure, like if they have to take medicine, ever. Like, plant-based people are just, they're such what Dr. Lau calls hyper-conscientious nutcases. And it's like, they see that as a failure. Like, even if they one time have to take an antibiotic, it's an interesting world that we're a part of.
Yeah, I think it's particularly interesting because lifestyle change is hard in the beginning, and it's so hard for most people to grasp. So I do feel like people who are so passionate about it, about what this lifestyle can do, what this lifestyle has done for each of us individually, and what we've seen it do for other people, that maybe we unintentionally kind of oversell it, and that we pitch it as this thing that's like, that's up here. And then when people struggle, we just help them to push right through and to keep going. And it's just so important, and all your problems will go away and everything's going to disappear. And then with that expectation, then that's really unrealistic. It's not really a way to live up to. I don't know a single person who has went on a, very healthy, whole food, plant-based diet and who has stuck with it for more than 6 months that says it's not the best kind of lifestyle that they would ever choose to live, right? But that period of change, and maybe it's, for some people, it's maybe 3 months that it's hard. And for some people, maybe it's a year or two that's hard. But everybody, once they kind of get over the hump of the challenges and they've made these experiences, it is truly an enjoyable way to live. But in me trying to share that with other people, like I might, when you summarize my 2-year journey in, of massive weight loss, and you summarize that into a 15-minute or 10-minute talk, like it sounds like the click of a finger, right? And it's not. But the hardest thing for me, and I see this a lot from the big weight loss community, is that when I mean, and for myself personally, my weight fluctuates. Honestly, my diet and lifestyle don't change, but my weight fluctuates, and I don't know why, right? Like, I don't know why. It's a puzzle. But I'm learning to become less obsessed with why. But the saddest thing is that when I see people feel like then they have to be alone, or they retreat, because I feel like often it's a time where we can really utilize our community and enjoy our community and benefit from our community the most, is when things are a little bit challenging. But just as you said, AJ, when people feel like they just have to step out, and especially if you put the responsibility for keeping the movement going onto one or two people's shoulders, like, oh my goodness, right? Like, that has to be a multiplier for any kind of anything that's not going perfectly, right? I mean, the stress alone that comes from feeling that has to be absolutely incredible. So, people who have stepped on stage and shown their pants, or like their before and after photos and things like that, and then they don't feel like they're their perfect picture of themselves anymore. Again, and speaking from personal experience, like, it's a shame, because I'm still loving I'm still the healthiest version of myself. I'll be able to say that honestly forever. And to your point, AJ, no matter what happens to me, I still honestly believe that everything within my control, I've made myself the healthiest I can be. But there is a big portion of that I'm not in control of. And I think that's the point. That's fine.
When you talk about weight loss, you see that a lot, not with just people fluctuating, but there have been people that have had at one point prominent channels or even books that have lost in the hundreds and gained it back. Yeah. And the ones that I know, most of them are still vegan, but it's tough.
Yeah.
And it's not something that we're really talking about much. And I think that's why we really wanted to bring these people together today to discuss this, because like you were saying, AJ, it's really easy for us to promote those incredible successes that we see, right? Because as lifestyle medicine or plant-based physicians, we see these incredible improvements, people living better lives, people reversing diseases, and we want to shout it, across to the world. We want to be on the rooftop screaming this so that people will understand that there's another option. But we don't often think about, well, what about the people who don't see these results, or who don't see incredible results? Maybe they're, just barely seeing some improvement, or maybe they're just stagnant, not really seeing results. Of course, we're not going to be promoting that if we're really looking to try to change the world and see a lot more people following this kind of a lifestyle. So how do we better help people know more about the realities of lifestyle medicine, the realities of going plant-based? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Like, what should we be doing going from today forward that might be a little bit different than what we've been doing up until now?
I think telling people that it's an odds game, it's not an absolute, and helping them, like what Anthony was saying, around what is your measure of success? Is it how much joy and aliveness and satisfaction and connection you're feeling in your life? If there's people I talk to and work with that are so vigilant, and they're so afraid of different foods, what I can't eat, what I have to eat. There's so much energy and intensity. Or if somebody's sick, they speak with such, like, if you just ate more broccoli, it would kill the cancer or something like that. And it's like, it's this intensity that, I mean, I always think, I try to remind myself that when people are judging or advising externally, that's what they're doing internally to themselves, but probably tenfold. And then I can shift towards compassion versus take it in as criticism and then start to go into shame spirals. So yeah, I think it's, if we can, I used to be pretty adamant about not adamant. When I first started the diet, I was like, this is the best thing. It's just this. Everybody's got to do it. I was pretty intense. And over the years, I've mellowed out. And, it's like alcohol. I used to say it's just not good for you at all. There's nothing good about alcohol. But then there's people that they have a glass of wine with friends, and for whatever reason, they don't go out if they don't have that wine, or they go and have that beer or whatever. Does that mean, I would love for them to try, and if they were interested in drinking things that were non-alcoholic, let's say, especially if they have cancer. But at the same time, if they're not going to socialize and connect, or it's going to hurt, they're going to leave their community. They don't want to get creative around how to build community where they feel accepted and enjoy. There's also a net negative from removing that alcohol. So it's not that I say, oh, you should just drink, but I want to acknowledge that there's a lot more to the equation than just what the foods are.
Yeah. I mean, just to piggyback on that, I mean, what he's bringing up is something that's sorely lacking in a lot of movements, and that's this idea of nuance. Matt and I, we've known each other over the years, and I think both of us, I've just been sensing, because I read his great writings and Alana's great writings too, and there's been a mellowing out that I've seen happen for some of us. But what I think is interesting is we're not mellowing out in the sense that we're compromising or settling on health, it's actually, I think that we're seeing more clearly that it's not as black and white as maybe it was made to seem, and that it's much more multifactorial, much more nuanced, much more of not just what you're doing on the outside, but what's coming up for you on the inside. And how are you responding to what's coming up for you on the inside? If you're experiencing a shame spiral, are you going deeper down that shame spiral, which I'll raise my hand. I've been victim of that many times. Or are you starting to notice that, become aware of it, and starting to take steps to actually come out of shame into compassion for yourself and for others? And this is all very subtle, but deep, and can really change things at a seismic level. But it's not glitzy and glamorous, and not something that you can necessarily measure on a scale. So I've become more wary of sort of the black and white, all or nothing, do this and everything will be fixed, because I've just realized it's not as simplistic as sometimes it's made to seem. And one example that highlights it is that my dear mentor, Dr. McDougall, his slogan, which is true in many respects, is it's the food, right? It's the food. How simple can it get? Your diabetes, it's the food. Your heart disease, it's the food, right? You're overweight, it's the food. And when people are addressing the food level at a root cause, then they're often able to come off medications or not go on medications in the first place. But what I started to realize over the years is we would tell people exactly what to eat, and they would agree intellectually. And then, right, as happens many times, their behavior could potentially deviate. And what I realized is that, yes, it's the food, but what's also going on is food is the symptom. That the way they're eating and the foods they're choosing, even though they've now gone through a program and they know exactly what they would be good and what all the evidence shows and what all the plant-based professionals like Greger and Esselstyn all show, they're still choosing this. And it's because of certain things that they haven't dealt with. And food becomes the alcohol or the marijuana or the cocaine or the heroin. It's their dopamine fix. And so if we're not addressing those upstream factors of what's driving them to downstream unhealthy food choices, we're missing it. And that takes a much deeper level of going, like peeling back the onion. Fixing the food is not enough. You've got to look inside. And as fans of Carl Jung would know, he talks about the shadow. The shadow is that part of ourselves that we just kind of want to numb, run away from, or distract from. We have to deal with our shadow. And if we don't deal with it, it's going to come out and bite you one way or another.
But it's also so much of a multifactorial thing that people don't acknowledge. What's your genetics? What happened before you started eating healthy? What was your exposures to toxins, which are increasing every day? And so we need to be more compassionate to everybody for all of this. But somebody said they lost sound, just so you guys know. I don't know. But anyways, I mean, we have to be compassionate with ourselves. We have to be compassionate with others. And it's not just one way is the right way. Everybody says, well, so-and-so says I need to do this. So-and-so says I need to do this. But it's the Kim diet, the AJ diet, the Nikki diet, the Anthony diet, the Matt diet, and lifestyle. Because what's a good lifestyle for somebody may not be a good lifestyle for me. And so, but overall, the lifestyle is eating healthier, moving more, stressing less, enjoying life, having community. And I really would like our community to support each other rather than tear each other down when something happens.
And people want, they almost, I don't know if they don't trust themselves or that's just how we were educated as a culture, but they want to be told what's right and what's wrong as far as how to live and eat and what's going to make them healthy and what's going to hurt them. And then once they grasp onto something, then they start pushing that on everybody else. And it's very uncomfortable to try and get people to take information in and then apply it and see what works for them. But that's what I think you're saying a little bit, Kim, is, hey, what here's the foods that tend to be health promoting. What works for you? I think if people hate I've had people that hate broccoli and get so bloated from beans, but they think they need them because of protein, that they're miserable. And they're trying to get and I'm like, why are you eating so many beans? And why do you feel like you have to eat broccoli? So how can people start to take information and then apply it in their own lives and then use their own internal assessment of how are they feeling? I think people just don't trust that because they've been confused for so long that they just want to be told. In fact, when we wrote the Forks Over Knives plan, we did not want to have a meal plan in there because we wanted to teach people the concepts and then they apply those and pick what to eat. And there was so many negative comments that eventually I think the editors made a meal plan and just put it in the book. It was shocking to me that people could not take information and we're like, the way you're going to sustain this the rest of your life is to figure out what works for you, not compare yourself to the person next to you and try and do what they're doing because they decided this is healthy. I don't even know what that means. This is healthier. Like to a certain extent, it's so relative. So anyway, I think we have to also acknowledge maybe that people are scared and they're trying to make decisions that don't give them immediate feedback. They're trying to eat now and hope that they don't get cancer or heart disease or die young, 10, 20, 30 years from now. So it's a little bit scary. It's almost like, parenting my kids with nonviolent communication. I hope they turn out okay. I'll find out when they're 18 to 20 and are they successful members in society or not, So it's all, John Mackey would say this all the time that, hey, there's never been a population that's been 100% vegan, yet we're carrying on like it's proven and it's clearly the best diet. It's like people always had a little bit of animal products, or in general, people would eat some animal products so it's like, how can we then come and say this is clearly the best diet? I've heard people talk about extrapolating and things like that. But as far as health, people come out and say, this is clearly, now there's other reasons. There's animal, kindness and, compassion and environmental and all sorts of other reasons to do that. But what I'm saying is when people come out and say, this is clearly the healthiest diet, like it's almost like don't even engage that person at that point.
It kind of reminds me, I'm Jewish. That's why it was doubly hard to take the pig enzymes because it's like a vegan and a Jew. Of course, this would happen to me. But, I've noted growing up, first Orthodox, well, actually we were conservative and then I was Orthodox and then I don't know what I am now. But in Judaism, there's different factors. There's the Hasidic, there's the Orthodox, there's the conservative, the Reform. And most Jews that want to be Jewish, they want their religion and they want their people to continue. But the factions of Judaism don't even get along. They all look down upon each other. And with the plant-based diet, I've always I've often seen that too. So if you take like, the raw food is kind of like, they're kind of like the top of the snob chain, like the people that believe in it feel that is the diet, done in the low fat way. They are like the most perfect. And if we're sick, it's because we didn't do that version. And then you have, you've got at this end, and I'm not saying that they're at this end, but the way people perceive, you got just the regular ethical vegans who, eat whatever they want as long as it's vegan. And then you've got the oil-free vegans, and then you've got the SOS-free vegans. And, they don't get along, and they each believe that their diet is superior. And if you got sick, and when one of their own got sick in the NHAs, well, because you fell off, or you didn't do it perfectly, and you didn't do it right. And Dr. Matt and I do a lot of shows together, and he has a lot of people with discordant eating that are eating a certain way out of fear, not out of joy. And to get a result. And, Dr. Dean Ornish in many of his books has written that, fear is just not sustainable. It is for a short term. Your doctor said you had a heart attack. Most people can do anything for a while, but so many people I see, and these are generally not the ethical vegans. They, in some ways, whether they're overweight or not overweight or sick or not sick, in many ways, they seem to be the happiest because they're doing it for a greater purpose, and they're not really judging what anybody else eats. We've often judged them, but if you're doing it just out of fear, it just seems like it's going to be really hard to sustain it. And I think what my diagnosis has rocked some people's world. And, because things get around, and I see people on other podcasts saying, well, if Chef AJ did it for 50 years and got cancer, what hope, they don't understand that we're very different genetically, and who knows, I have a very strong family history of cancer. I'm the first female, but all the men in my family died of cancer, and they died young. And I was living in a terrible apartment, like a tenement housing for years. I mean, who knows, and so I think people have to know why they're doing it too, because they expect sometimes such unrealistic and immediate responses. And, I thought my friend Chuck Carroll would have been great on this panel, because he has a very unusual circumstance. Like what he has is not like just something that is common in medical literature, but he hit it for a while too. And like, I remember him saying, like, if I could just feel 50% better, that would be a win, And so I think they look at people like these beautiful, 20 something influencers that lost all this weight, and they're really young and sexy and beautiful. And they, like you say about comparing themselves, we're not even comparing ourselves to people like that are realistic to compare ourselves to, we're comparing ourselves to like the person that did reverse their cancer, or that did lose 300 pounds. And that, I think, comparison is never good, but especially if you're going to compare yourself to somebody that's kind of similar to you, maybe that's around your age, that, so I think this is a great conversation, but I don't know how to get through to the people because they do believe it. Most of the people I know that believe in a certain diet, believe in it 100%, that it is the best. And that if something's wrong, it's because we didn't do their version and we didn't do it good enough. And I ate more broccoli than anybody in the world, because I actually like broccoli and I still eat it. But if broccoli was the cure, I should be in remission.
Yeah, and AJ, just also to point out that you've always felt great. Like, from what I understand, it's the medical, as Mick McDougall would call, the medical business is what made you sick.
Yeah, the treatment is what made me sick. But yeah, I feel great, and I'm still starting to feel a lot better too as the medicine, slowly, leaves my body and the ravages. But yeah, that's the other thing. I do feel great on a vegan diet. I feel better on a healthy vegan diet than I did when I was eating the junk food vegan diet and was 75 pounds heavier. I mean, just because, I just do. But yeah.
Right, but that's the point, is like, how many people have all sorts of growths happening inside of them and don't know about it?
Probably a lot of us.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
it's very easy to point fingers, but if we did MRIs and scans of all these people, they would be finding all sorts of stuff. So does that mean that their diet is wrong if we find something on their scan?
Right. Well, and again, it's all about risk reduction. Like Dr. Schroyer was saying earlier, this is not meant to be the golden ticket that you'll never get anything and that you won't die, right? Because we all will. And I still remember Dr. McDougall saying in one of his talks, he said, eventually I will die too. Like, this is what happens. This is not going to prevent that. You know, and I think that one of the issues, and this is something that AJ, you brought up, is this like kind of fighting between each other on these different diets that are all plant-based diets that just have their own little nuances. And ultimately, I think all of us would agree that the more fruits and veggies you eat, the better you'll do overall, right? The less risk you have of a lot of chronic diseases. And I think that that's more important, is how can you get to the point where you're living a healthier lifestyle that brings you joy, that feels sustainable to you, that decreases your risk of those chronic diseases that you don't need to necessarily have. And I don't think it's as much about this fighting between, well, is it, you know, should we have nuts? Should we not have nuts? You know, does it really need to be this low fat? Could it be a little higher fat? You know, does it need to be all raw, or what percentage of raw? I think it's just more important that we figure out, just in general, how do you just live a healthier lifestyle and eat more vegetables? I don't know. Does anybody else have any comments on that?
Well, I think you said it. Oh, go ahead, Kim. And then
Well, I was just going to say, I thought Sid Noter says it really well in here. She says, compare yourself to your best possible self, not to others. And I love that. I think that's a really good thing, because eating a little healthier makes you healthier. Eating, it doesn't matter if you know, even if you're sick, it can make you a little healthier. Being more compassionate can make yourself a little healthier. Moving a little bit more every day can make you healthier. And so just make yourself a little healthier in whatever way works for you. But I'm sorry, Anthony, go ahead. Dr. Lim.
Yeah, and I'd say, like, you know, risk reduction is one key thing, but I don't know that that necessarily inspires people and drives them. But you said a key word, like joy, and I think things like vitality, you know, and Chef AJ brought up the importance of Judaism in her life, and for me as a Christian, there's one verse that has always inspired me, and it's Galatians 5:22-23. And it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." And I think about this every day, because these are the 9 fruit of the Spirit. It's sort of the evidence, the outgrowth, the outpouring of a life that is sort of grounded in your faith and in peace. And so, referring to a question earlier, what is an example of a shadow that you are eating to avoid dealing with it? What I've started to see is when I'm not experiencing the fruit of the Spirit, when I'm experiencing envy, when I'm experiencing anger, when I'm experiencing resentment, when I'm experiencing comparison with others, or feelings of depression, or feelings of I'm not good enough, that's the shadow. And I can either eat those away, which I see many patients do. Oh, I feel a sense of rejection. That's uncomfortable. I don't like this. Let's go to Denny's, or let's go to In-N-Out and eat my worries away, or Instagram my worries away, or drink my worries away. Or can I sit with this discomfort? Can I see what this is surfacing and bringing up for me? Can I go for a walk? Can I pray or meditate in the space of this? Can I learn something about myself and others and spirituality in the process, and my relationship with the great unknown? I mean, you know, wherever it takes you. But I think that we can all agree that adversity, especially in this world we live in, and stress is just a given. And what we often see is a huge range of how people respond to that stress. And I think a lot of people medicate or numb the stress away in some way or other that is in the short term hits their dopamine, but in the long term sabotages their growth and transformation. And so what I would vote for is people doing more of that deep inner work. And I think Matt's modeling this really well. I mean, he's on the outside, right? Amazing plant-based professional, eating super well, raising a happy family, and then yet he's sharing things in his life that, like, at a subtle level wouldn't hit a Geiger counter, but like he's noticing it. And if he chose not to deal with it and just rest on his laurels of eating beans and greens every day, who knows what that would turn into? Who knows if that would fester and develop into something? I mean, there's a famous MD, Gabor Mate, who talks a lot about this, of just the hidden cost of stress and distress in our life that goes undealt with. So I just want to bring up that fruit of the spirit, that we're not just after risk reduction, we're after a joyous life filled with vitality and peace and patience and love. And so when we see fighting going on amongst plant-based professionals, what that tells me is that they're not at peace. They're not at peace. They may be eating healthier than 99.99% of the world, and yet there's an inner anger and distress that makes me sad. And that's not being talked about. And the more that we can talk about it as plant-based professionals, have this kind of dialogue, I think that it can change the world, because then patients are gonna be like, huh, it's not so clear, and wow, like I can be compassionate with myself in the space of this discomfort.
I want to applaud you for saying that, because, you know, while I do like the motto of it's the food, it's the food, it's the food, I take exception to it because it's not just the food, and it's not only the food. And when Dr. Matt and I had known each other for a really long time, worked together in LA, and then we kind of like lost touch. But then right after Dr. McDougall died, which was about 2 years ago, I had texted him because we were doing an online memorial and I wanted to know if he would speak. And I hadn't come out publicly yet, because I knew a couple of years, you know, before I came out about this diagnosis, and I let it slip. And I said, you know, I'm just, you know, of course I'm devastated, because he was like a father to me, and also he was helping me with my cancer. And Matt goes, what cancer? And then Matt like shared with me all this information, and he can talk more about, I think it's this, like about how stress can actually cause cancer to grow and metastasize, and how I needed to not just, because there wasn't really much I could do for my diet other than, I guess I could have done Dr. Goldner's program, except when you have pancreatitis, raw vegetables, and all vegetables are pretty tough. I did try water fasting 3 times, and it was, you know, I got down to 97 pounds. But what he believes and teaches, and so do you, Dr. Lim, is this piece that is completely missing from the plant-based world for the most part, with a few exceptions. Dr. Ornish had talked about it for years. He wrote a book, Love and Survival. So it's not that everyone in the plant-based world is doing it, but it's completely missing. And I notice that when I do YouTube shows, if I have, you know, a guest on that lost 100 pounds, I'll get tons of views. But if I have some like Dr. Matt, I'm actually teaching this work, it's like, not interested, because that would require, I think doing inner work and making peace with yourself, and, you know, facing your traumas. And I don't want to say names, but Dr. Lim, you and I know somebody that we've worked with that completely doesn't believe in adverse childhood experiences or trauma as making any difference. And there are people in the world, and even in the plant-based world, that will say that's ridiculous. And so they you know, they hear dissenting voices, but I think it's a lot easier to just be told what to eat than to have to look within yourself and deal with yourself. And that, I believe, you know, it's funny, because when I was searching, I did not want to do conventional treatment, and I fought it for a long time, but I looked into a lot of these alternative places, which are just ridiculously expensive. But what was interesting is they always give you a free consult. And so you're on the phone, and, you say, what is your diagnosis? And I go, lung cancer. And all these alternative places, whether they're in the United States or Mexico, would say, oh, you have a lot of grief. You have, I mean, like they would, like they believe it in the alternative world. Whereas in the plant-based world, it's like, unless it can be measured, you know, with a blood test or seen on an X-ray, it's not, doesn't seem to be believed. And I think Dr. Clapper uses the phrase, and I believe it's the name of his book, What's Missing from Medicine. What's missing from medicine is the piece that you believe in, that now Dr. Matt is so excited about teaching. But I think it's a lot tougher sell than just giving somebody a meal plan.
Yeah, there's this idea that what's happening in your environment, there's no way that can affect your body. It's like, to me, it's almost common sense the other way, where there's inputs coming in, whether we're swallowing them as food, we're seeing them, we're feeling them, our thoughts, and all of that changes your physiology. You know, it changes. I mean, it just changes so much, that to think that is not impact, especially when it's chronic. Just like eating one unhealthy meal isn't going to make or break you, but eating unhealthy meals over and over again is what causes the problem. It's the same thing when you're in a toxic environment, and toxic I'm using generally, just like the word stress. I don't think that's clear enough, because people say I'm not stressed, and it has nothing to do with what you think. It's like, but it's it's over and over again being in environments that are stimulating, what I talk about is threat physiology, and I'm simplifying it even there. But at every level, at the cellular level, at the gene expression level, at the larger autonomic nervous system level, I mean, it's all blood flows, and I mean, it's just amazing how much information there is now showing how you interact with other people and your social environment affects your body. And imagine doing it in a way that's chronically stimulating, and of course it's going to cause problems. So I don't think it's a matter of if it does, it's more a matter of, do people believe it or not? Because it is hard to measure. If someone's grieving, how do I measure their grief? Do I catch their tears and try and or it's subjective? And I think if people ignore subjective information and are it's gonna lead to missing a lot of opportunity to help people and to heal.
I know we only have like 10 or so minutes. I mean, in terms of concrete practical things, like three things that I think would really start to make a difference is, one, like just really bringing up talking about the multiple factors that feed into health. It's not just what we eat. It's how we sleep. It's how we move our body. I mean, if you just take movement, right? Movement, there's so much to it. It's not just walking every day, because you can walk every day. Meanwhile, your muscles are wasting away. So you got to bring in strength training. And it's not just strength training, it's mobility. You could be lifting a lot, but you can't touch your toes, right? So even movement has multiple things. And someone could be eating a super healthy vegan diet, walking every day, fall and fracture their hip because they weren't paying attention to that resistance training, right? So it's the sleep, it's how we move, it's how we handle stress, it's the sense of purpose and meaning. Just like really emphasizing that this is more than just what we eat. And then I think a second thing is a call for honesty. Like, I mean, what you were told, AJ, like don't say anything. It will hurt the movement. That only further, I have no problem believing that was said to you, because that's what I see. I see sort of like, ooh, this is bad PR. Let's stuff it. Let's hide this. And so what you get is a distorted picture of all the 100-pound success stories, and none of the like, this was tough. This was challenging. And I think if we got a more balance, I actually think it would lend credibility, and it would build more draws, and people would feel more met in where they're at. So it's sort of a call for honesty, and we're better to model honesty than with the leaders. So the leaders need to start just being more honest just about the benefits, but also the limits. And then third is more conversation around the things that happen that are beyond our control. Like, how do we start to respond in healthy ways? Because there's so many type A perfectionists out there, and they all want to be eating the perfect diet, and they're comparing, and they're looking on Instagram and measuring their metrics and all that. And some of them are doing it really well, but they're like a pressure cooker, and you've met them. They're just a pressure cooker. They're not fun to be around. And as people were alluding to, they're driven by fear, not by this sense of joy and freedom. And I wonder what that's doing to their physiology and what that's doing to their health in the process of eating all this good stuff, but it's a pressure cooker. And so just this sense that some things are outside your control. And if we don't have a healthy way of coping with things that are outside of our control, then ultimately we're only as good as things that are within our control. And that's a pretty scary place to be, because if there's one thing we're learning about this world, it's like you read the headlines, there is so much that's outside of our control.
I think one of the things that I try and work with my patients, myself, and others is we're so conditioned to be critical of others and critical of ourselves. And so compassion outside is very important, compassion towards others, but also compassion towards yourself. And self-congratulating, self-compassion when you make a healthy choice, when you do that, but and just being forgiving. That's also a big thing, because if you can't forgive, you're carrying around a huge burden. So keep working towards your best self by eating as well as you can and living as well as you can and caring as much as you can, but care about yourself too. That's one of the things I would say.
I think another thing we can do is kind of change the target as well, and we can focus on how can we live more happily or joyfully, and how can we have more fun, and that people may feel is a goal worth working towards. I think it's a goal that's certainly attainable. It means something different for everyone, but it's positive to work towards, and it's not something that we're going to be looking to measure on paper or compared to other people, right? Because it can only be assessed internally. And we do that, in coaching, when you're digging down and trying to get to someone's why, and well, why do you want that? Why do you want that? You keep asking the question over and over and over, and you get to the root of what someone's really looking for. And it usually has nothing to do with their state of their medical state. Usually it doesn't have anything to do with their the number that shows up on the scale when they weigh themselves. It usually shows up as something that they want to enjoy in life, or a way that they want to live. And building on what Sid said in the comments about comparing to your best possible self, to me, I think that's a great idea. I think that's also, for me, that's a little bit stressful, because I've been able to do things in the past that I can't do today, quite frankly, right? Or I've got a pair of pants in my closet that I still can't get back into, that I used to wear, and they used to feel baggy. But if I flip that, or if I just take that one step forward, Sid, and I'm saying this, Sid, not to pick on her, because I love Sid. She does wonderful things for a lot of people. But if I compare myself to my worst, to myself at my worst, or myself as, where I'm coming from, and that could be myself yesterday, that could be myself 20 years ago. Like, it doesn't have to even be like, but if I just take a moment to recognize the progress that I've made, and the way that I feel, and the joys that I do get to experience, and all of the fun things that I get to do, then that's something that does help me to both feel good, reduce stress, and it's motivating for me to continue, enjoying myself in all of these same ways, which happens to include, eating healthy and living a healthy lifestyle, and exercise and movement, and all of those other things that are so important.
Yeah, and I think that something that Dr. Lynn, that you had mentioned, was this idea of this honesty in the leaders in this movement. And not only maybe not necessarily that we're sharing our own health information, but maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's talking more honestly, with not just always having, patient testimonials that are these amazing results, but maybe talking to people who struggle and aren't seeing the improvements that they want, or are struggling to just follow through with these lifestyle changes that they would like to follow through with, that they're just unable to for some reason. And I think that honesty also needs to translate into how we care for our patients, because if we tell our patients, being heart attack proof means that you have to have a total cholesterol of 150 or lower, then now this patient is going to think, if I can't get to that target, I've failed. And it's something wrong with me. It's because I'm not following the lifestyle perfectly, that it's my fault, because this doctor told me it was possible, right? And so it's also important that we are sharing with our patients the reality of what we see, what our experience shows, what the studies show, so that there is this real expectation, and not this conflated, expectation of I'm going to lose all the weight and be down to my ideal weight. I'm going to have my cholesterol be the lowest I've ever seen it. I'm going to get off all of my medications because they saw one interview that showed that is possible, right? We have to be more realistic with what can lifestyle medicine really do. And what I've seen, although I haven't been practicing lifestyle medicine for an extremely long time, what I've seen is that it's different for everyone. That it depends on how long have you lived with this disease? How old are you? What is your background? Like, what was your lifestyle prior to this? What is your genetic background? There's so many things that go into play with all of this that we can't guarantee to someone that they're going to hit this metric. That it's just not the way, it's just not for every single person, that it's not going to be the same. So I don't know, any other thoughts on that? I know we've got a few more minutes left.
Yeah, because it can also give you a false sense of security. I've had people where they show up with a cholesterol of 130, and then you put them on a plant-based diet, a total cholesterol goes down to 90. So 130 was too high for that person. So, focusing on the number is at best telling you to check in and say, is there anything in my lifestyle that I should modify? Or, same thing with weight. Use it as an indicator of, hey, how am I doing with my diet and lifestyle? Maybe I should take another look at something, versus that's the end game.
Well, I've been really, so in just as an example of honesty, I've been really open with my patients for the last 8 to 10 years and just letting them into my journey, because I know there's a lot of patients that struggle with mental health. And my biggest challenge that I faced in my life is my lifelong history of anxiety and depression. It's amazing how many people out there, and I think the rates are only increasing, are struggling with one or both of these. And what was interesting for me is that no matter how healthy I ate, I would feel better, but I've been on medications, multiple medications for depression, anxiety for 2 decades. And this included the first 5-6 years of working at the McDougall program. So food, as powerful as it was not powerful enough to get me off my Wellbutrin, my Buspirone. And I didn't consider that a failure. I never considered that a failure of the diet. But what it made me realize is I got to look deeper, because I'm not convinced that this depression, anxiety is organic, and I have a lifelong sentence to this. And it actually got me leaning much more in terms of my faith and spirituality and emotional work and deep inner work, and sort of the stuff, a lot of type of things that Matt and Alana are talking about. And I'm not saying that's going to be forever, but I'm 3 years now off of all medication. Like, after 2 decades on over 10 different medications for anxiety, depression, and numerous appointments with therapists. I'm not seeing a therapist. Not that I love therapy, but I'm just not needing therapy. And I'm on no medication for 3 years. And so it's things like that just convince me of a few things. Number one, that health is so much more, right? It's, and so I talk a lot about patients with faith and spirituality. I'm one of the few doctors that says, look, I'm not trying to convert or preach to anyone, but for people for whom spirituality is important, the evidence shows this is an important pillar and that it actually improves health. So let's talk about it. So opening conversations about that as a potential transformative force in people's lives. And then, and second, just like it's convinced me of the benefits of honesty, because I've had so many emails of people saying, oh, thank you. Like, knowing that someone like you who's eating healthy still struggled with anxiety, depression, still continues to struggle, but you're off medications and dealing with it in other ways, like it's very validating and helpful for me. And I have not once in all this time been like, oh my gosh, you struggle with it. Like, not one comment of judgment. It's unbelievable to me. So for people who fear that vulnerability is going to, I guess it always can, there's going to be the haters out there, but I think a lot of it is in sort of the way you talk about it, the way you deliver it. And it's just made me a huge fan of authenticity.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. All right, I know that we're coming up on the hour. Are there any final thoughts anyone has?
I have just a expression of gratitude. Oh, everywhere you go, leave a glitter trail of kindness behind you. Thank you, AJ. That's beautiful.
AJ, I was always wondering what all that glitter was behind you now.
Yeah, now you know.
Kindness is falling out.
That's great.
I just wanted to say thank you first to Dr. Lim for sparking this conversation. You know, this came up at one of our team meetings, and you know, bringing this out in that setting is so awesome. But I can already see through the comments here that this is a conversation I think that's going to be helpful to a lot of people. And you know, first of all, I don't think that we would have had it if it wasn't for your spark. Certainly, thank you to Matt and AJ for joining and for sharing your expertise, and of course to Kim and Nikki for you know, kind of embarking on this journey, you know, together with us at Lifestyle Telemedicine, and Nikki for hosting. I just want to say thank you to everyone, and it wouldn't be me if I didn't say thank you to everyone who's watching this video, because I mean, I just have such a deep appreciation for a whole entire community. I just want to share that every chance I get. So thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Amazing.
AJ,
Thank you, Anthony.
I want to thank you for your courage to come out with this, because I think it's been so important and all you've done. So really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. This was a great conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah, real
great
pleasure,
conversation.
everybody. Thank you.
You know, and I wanted to mention that, you know, this, you know, we talked a little bit about, you know, it's the food, and now we've talked about how it's, yes, it is the food, but there are other aspects to living a healthy, joyful life. And, you know, I do know that if you've ever been a patient of ours at Lifestyle Telemedicine, you know that we have some very long questionnaires that you fill out before you can meet with one of our doctors. And we do ask about your community, your relationships. We ask about your movement. What are you doing for daily movement? We ask the adverse childhood experiences. We ask about history of depression, anxiety. So I think that we do need to make sure that as lifestyle medicine professionals, we are getting a more rounded idea of where people are at, and we're not just asking for a food diary, right? Because it is so much more than that. So having said that, thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this important panel today. I hope that this kind of sparks more curiosity around this topic, and that we talk more about this honesty and this vulnerability and the realities of lifestyle medicine. And I do appreciate all of you being here today and talking about those things. So thank you again to the panel. Thank you again to everyone watching today. We really appreciate you sticking it out with us for the hour, and hope that we get to see you at Lifestyle Telemedicine. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Live, laugh every day.